A company announces a devastating $980 million loss, and instantly, headlines explode. Social media laughs, stock analysts panic, and investors shake their heads in disbelief. But here's the shocking part. This wasn't a risky crypto exchange, not a VR startup chasing the metaverse, and not even a food delivery app trying to survive after burning through venture capital. This story is about something most of us see every week. Something familiar, something simple, a cup of coffee. This is the story of how a 45-year-old coffee chain called Bean Brew Coffee, a classic brand known for comfortable seating, quiet jazz music, and warm pastries, tried to transform itself into the future of work, and how that one dream, mixed with billions in debt and a massive shift in consumer behavior, triggered one of the most surprising collapses in modern retail. During the height of the remote work boom, millions of people suddenly changed how they lived. Apartments became offices. Dining tables became conference rooms. And as the world traded commutes and cubicles for video calls, a bold idea emerged from a startup named WorkHub. Their pitch was simple. The workplace is no longer an office building. It's anywhere with strong Wi-Fi, great coffee, and a comfortable environment. So why not build it? WorkHub wasn't a typical startup. They didn't want to create co-working spaces like WeWork that required monthly memberships and offices in tall buildings. No, they wanted something more accessible. They envisioned hybrid coffee shops designed specifically for remote workers, places with soundproof mini work pods, phone call rooms, conference tables you could rent by the hour, and premium coffee delivered right to your workspace without you ever getting up. Within months, WorkHub exploded across TikTok, LinkedIn, and startup forums. Investors called it the Starbucks of remote work, the office of the future, and the hub for the digital class. And sitting quietly in the background watching this hype unfold was Bean Brew Coffee, a traditional company that had been around for generations. They saw their stores changing. Customers who used to sit for 20 minutes were now staying for 3 hours, using the cafe like an office. By late 2021, Bean Brew made a decision that would change everything. They announced they were acquiring WorkHub for a stunning $3.2 billion in a merger that industry analysts described as a revolution in workplace culture. The plan was to convert hundreds of Bean Brew locations into hybrid WorkHub lounges, creating a nationwide chain of co-working coffee environments. Wall Street loved it. The company's stock climbed to an all-time high of $61.40 per share. Influencers were calling it the future. Articles praised the vision, a world where people didn't have to choose between a cafe and an office because it could be both. The combined company, now rebranded as BrewHub Group, was suddenly valued at over $11 billion. Investors felt like they were witnessing the rebirth of the cafe industry. Everything seemed perfect. But underneath the excitement, something else was slowly forming, an invisible, silent risk that no one wanted to acknowledge. The entire deal relied on one massive assumption that remote work would remain the dominant lifestyle forever. But just as quickly as the world changed in 2020, it began to shift again. By mid-2023, companies started calling employees back. Hybrid schedules became the norm. People spent fewer days working from cafes. WorkHub's core business model, paid seating, hourly meeting rooms, and coffee service subscriptions began to soften. But BrewHub refused to believe it. They kept expanding, rapidly converting stores into WorkHub lounge cafes. It was growth built on a foundation that was already cracking. Then the second problem hit, and it hit even harder. To fund the merger, BrewHub Group had taken on billions in interest loans, while money was cheap and interest rates were at historic lows. But then inflation surged. The central bank raised interest rates again and again and again. Suddenly, BrewHub's debt wasn't cheap anymore. They were now paying hundreds of millions of dollars in interest every year, money they desperately needed to operate their new hybrid cafes. The problem didn't show up all at once. It crept in slowly, disguised in quarterly earnings reports. Caf work hour bookings began to decline. Students and freelancers who once filled tables found cheaper alternatives: libraries, campuses, home offices, and even parks. Corporate teams that booked BrewHub's meeting rooms in 2022 were now holding calls online instead. Companies cut travel budgets, team-building retreats, and off-site meetings. That meant fewer weekday reservations, and those weekday bookings were the most profitable part of the entire business model. Executives tried to reassure investors on earnings calls, saying it was temporary, a slight seasonal dip, and nothing to worry about. But internal data told a different story. Same-location workspace revenue fell 11%, then 14%, then nearly 16% over the next several quarters. And when a business depends on customers coming back every week, a decline like that is not a dip. It is a downward trend, a warning, a slow-motion train derailment. Despite all of this, Brewhub kept opening new locations, 19 in one year, then 26 the next. They believed that expanding would counter the slowdown. But instead, every new location became a new cost, a new liability, a new store fighting for fewer and fewer customers. As financial pressure grew, marketing turned desperate. Brewhub offered student remote work passes, unlimited coffee subscriptions, weekend discounts, referral rewards, free trial desk hours, anything to bring people back. They even partnered with a famous productivity app, promising members exclusive WorkPod booking rates, but nothing worked. Customers liked the concept, but not enough to pay for it every week. Behind closed doors, executives began to admit the truth. They had misread the market. Not because the idea was bad, but because they assumed the pandemic lifestyle would last forever. They assumed remote workers would want to pay for a workspace every day. They assumed coffee and co-working was a guaranteed pairing. They assumed demand would grow endlessly. They were wrong. In September 2024, the board released a carefully worded statement that sounded calm and positive, but everyone understood what it really meant. Brewhub Group would split back into two companies. The merger was over. They called it a strategic separation, a refocus of operations, and a plan to unlock independent value. The translation? The experiment failed. But the most painful moment arrived in February 2025, when Brewhub Group released its annual report. One number shocked the entire investment world: $980 million in intangible asset impairment charges. In plain language, that number meant the company admitted Workhub was worth almost $1 billion less than what they believed when they bought it. They didn't just lose money, they had overpaid by a staggering amount. A dream that once soared became a weight, dragging the company toward the ground. Within weeks, the stock was trading near $12. A business once valued at $11 billion was now worth just a fraction of that barely $2.5 billion. Investors who once celebrated the acquisition now called it one of the most expensive miscalculations in retail history. So, what truly went wrong? First, they bet on a trend instead of a permanent behavioral shift. Remote work stayed, but not in the way they predicted. People didn't want to pay premium workspace fees to drink coffee while working. Many preferred working from home or return to offices. Second, they took on massive debt at the worst possible time. When interest rates exploded, that debt became a financial anchor they could not escape. Third, they scaled before they proved the model was stable. They expanded based on projections, not results, and ignored warning signs when demand started shrinking. And yet, here is the irony. The idea wasn't wrong. People still love cafes. People still work remotely. There is still demand for flexible work environments, but timing is everything. A great idea at the wrong time is still a bad investment. Today, Brewhub and Workhub are slowly returning to separate identities. The brand that believed it could become the center of the modern work revolution is now rebuilding itself one cup at a time. And this story will be remembered as a lesson every business must learn. Not every boom becomes a forever market. Some are temporary waves, and if you chase them with billions of dollars, you might ride the top of the wave. But you might also be the one left underwater when it crashes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most surprising business collapses of the decade, make sure to subscribe for more stories where ambition, innovation, and billions of dollars collide. Because sometimes the future arrives early, and sometimes it sends the bill.